right. Good. We are recording. This is our very first curriculum call for the Nourished Path. So just so you know where you are and what you're listening to, this is for everybody who is part of the Nourished Path. And you're invited to come on live. You're invited to listen to the recording. I'll always put out a replay. I think what I'm going to do is actually create a WhatsApp group with all the Nourished Path. There are 3 Nourished Paths right now. And create a group with all of us so that I can put the videos there, and that can be a place where we chat about curriculum a little bit separate from the small groups. I think it might be a more lively conversation because there's more people to keep it going. Today, specifically, I want to talk about the phases of nourishment, and just like pretty much everything I do, I want to just not do a full-out meditation, but just spend a minute just closing your eyes and breathing. So wherever you are, whatever you're doing, if you're listening in a car, do not close your eyes, but otherwise, close your eyes and just find your breath. Find your breath and follow your breath. That's all there is to do. For 1 minute, find your breath and pay attention to the inhale and to the exhale. And anytime the mind does what it does, which is go a million places, just bring it back. I'm paying attention to the breath, just for 1 minute. Noticing the breath move in. And however that experience is for you in your unique, amazing body. And notice the breath moving out in your unique, amazing body. And take one more attentive breath, paying attention to the in and the out. And then let the breath pattern and your focus on breath shift, and pay attention to how you feel in this moment. Just give it a name. Just notice, what do I feel in this moment? Right? So much of our work is about paying attention, noticing, how are we feeling, what's going on, and honestly, sometimes 1 minute of meditation and just saying, how am I feeling, can bring us back into connection, into relationship with ourselves, which is what we really want. So today, what I want to talk about, and I'm excited to talk about, is phases of nourishment. So these are phases of nourishment. The reason I wanted to start with phases of nourishment is because specifically because of celebratory eating, and that's one of the phases of nourishment. And I wanted to talk to you about it now because it's around the holiday time, and there's just a lot of offerings on the table, right? So we want to notice, like, this is a certain phase of nourishment. It's not bad, it's not wrong, it's a phase of nourishment. So I wanted to put it in context with the other phases of nourishment that we all go through at different times of our life. So first I'm just going to list them, and there's a few more that'll come out as we talk, but the ones that I'm listing are based on the Institute for Psychology of Eating, which is one of the places that I've studied, and Mark David collected these phases of nourishment. There's some that I have altered through that I think make more sense, some that I've added, but this is pretty much his lineup of phases of nourishment. Hi, Rebecca. So, okay, so here's where we are. This is just the grand list. It'll probably grow as we talk, but one is cleansing phase, building phase, sustaining phase, emotional phase, celebration phase. I really want to go into that. Learning phase, fanatic or fundamentalist phase, death phase, healing phase, anything goes phase, and surrender phase. So I want to go through these. I'll probably add in my own take on them as we go or take on other ones that I've seen in my work. And I'm going to put celebratory phase at the end because I want to go into it a little bit deeper. So first, there's cleansing phase, right? This is something that I know we've all had this experience. It's sort of this desire to clean house, right? I want a sense of renewal. I want to start again. Sometimes when we have that desire for cleansing phase, it can start to hook into our diet head. Oh, I kind of have that feeling of like wanting to clean house or like eat simply or let go of the foods that hook me, the sugars, the simple carbs. I want to just feel a little simpler around food, that feeling of renewal. And that's a normal phase of nourishment. It can get a little bit skewed when we go, oh, okay, I have that desire that I want to be in that cleansing phase. So I think what I'll do is start on Weight Watchers again. Or I think what I'll do is go on a 7-day juice cleanse, right? Or I think what I'll do, right? We can start to feel that desire for a cleansing phase, which is normal, right? All of these phases of nourishments are normal. And the reason it's so important to get that they're normal is because we can go, oh my gosh, what's wrong with me? I'm eating this way. Or what's wrong with me? I have to get back to this, some static normal or specific way of eating that we've made up or that society has made up for us or that we're always going to eat this one way. It doesn't happen that way. The other thing I want to say as we're going along, if you're here live and you have a question, just interrupt me. I'm going to keep rolling, but just say, hey, Nina, I have a question. And I'm happy to stop and talk about it. So the other part of this cleansing phase is sometimes we want to, cut down on alcohol. Sometimes we want to cut down on coffee, things that we know are kind of jangling us. And we want to be like, you know what? I think I want to experiment what it is to ease off of that. Right? I get this sense pretty much every spring. And I also get the sense somewhere like late summer. I have this feeling of like, I just want to simplify. I also get this experience right after the spring rosé season because I recently went to the doctor and they said, do you drink wine? Do you drink? And I said, yeah, I drink wine sometimes. And they said, how much? I said, it depends if it's rosé season or not. Then I drink more wine and then it's done. And I don't drink so much, right? So right around after like that spring, everybody's got all their like rosés. I'm like, I need a cleansing phase. That is like too much alcohol for this system. I get swollen, my rings don't fit, the inflammation of the alcohol. I'm like, nope, I need a cleansing. I need to simplify, I need to cut out the alcohol, I need to eat more veggies, I need things that help reduce my inflammation. Right? That's that experience of cleansing phase, right? There also might be with that cleansing phase, it's sometimes a saying goodbye to a chapter in our life, right? There might be some loss, right? So cleansing sometimes, even though it's that sense of like clean house, you know how when you're cleaning house and you're trying to clean a closet or clean a junk room, that there's there's a mess first, right? There's a mess first, and then we're trying to clean and it creates more clutter, and then we're able to organize, and then we get through. Same with ourself, right? Sometimes we start on feeling more cleansing with our food and we feel kind of crappy at first, and then we start to feel more fluidity. Okay? When we distort this phase and we stay stuck in it, we're in diet head. We're in body management, right? And it makes it hard to be just in the natural flow of all these different phases of nourishment. The other thing that's a little tricky about this cleansing phase, especially in our culture where there is real toxicity in chemicals in our laundry detergent, our house detergent, and there are alternatives to that. And if that's something you're interested in, Rebecca, who's on the phone, works a lot with essential oils, and she knows a lot about how to create more non-toxic products of all kinds in our house. But what to come back to this cleansing phase, when we can get stuck in this place, we can get caught in this idea like I have to detoxify myself fully. And we can get into this place of orthorexia, which is actually a new diagnosis. We've heard of anorexia or bulimia, compulsive overeating. Orthorexia is that rigidity that people get around eating healthy. And we'll talk more about that. That gets into the fanatic and fundamentalist phase. I have been there. But this cleansing phase can hook us into that thinking, like, this isn't good for me. I'm not allowed to do that. Right? I have to be clean eating, right? And it's tricky because we have a culture where we want to be, there's this sort of idealized view of clean eating, right? And I have a sense of what works for my body. And I used to use that term, clean eating, but I've shifted it now to what works for me, what works for my body. Not what's clean eating, because then if you've got clean eating, what do you have? You have dirty eating? Like, how does that work? So, and it gets into the value judgment, good, bad, and we get into black and white thinking. Cleansing phase has a beginning and an end, right? We're sort of cleaning up our act a little, but it doesn't last. And when we think, and I have thought this myself, and I know some of you have thought it too, this is it, I've got it, I've created this cleansing phase, and I am in it forever. It's just not how life works. Life happens, we're invited out to a party, we get ill, there's changes. So that cleansing phase is not like the forever, okay? There has to be a little bit of a letting go of the cleaning out and be okay a little bit with a world's toxicity, being okay with the mess, because that's life, okay? So that was one, cleansing phase. Building phase, right? A building phase is a time when we naturally feel our strength increasing, right? We're maybe exercising more. We need more protein. We're needing to grow more muscle. We're on this energetic upswing. And it often corresponds to a time in our life when we're expanding, right? We're growing, right? We might be attracted to denser foods, nuts, butters, fish, meats, oils, right? We might be surprised, like we have more of an appetite. Our capacity to eat more is, without feeling bad, is just like, it's no problem. My body goes into this building phase when I'm very stressed. It's like, I've got to stay strong. So I get into this more protein, more healthy fats, okay? And like all these phases, it can last for a few days, it can last for a few months, right? The whole concept of me introducing these phases of nourishment is so that you put everything in the realm of normal eating instead of good eating and bad eating, okay? So this is a time when we allow ourselves to feel, strong and dense, and honoring our need for expansion, for solidity, for growth, right? And sometimes after we finish a cleansing phase, the building phase might be right after there, right? And it also might be that we see our appetite grow in different ways, right? Our appetite for pleasure, our appetite for movement, our appetite, we might see that building phase show up in different places of hunger, of desire. Okay? When this phase goes a little wonky, when we distort this phase, we might get stuck in this, like, I've got to get to the gym every single day. I've got to do my workout. If I'm not feeling super strong, I am not good enough, right? Whew, that's a lot of pressure. And people like love this feeling because it feels kind of pumped up, and people get a little afraid of leaving it because, uh-oh, do I feel a little more weak? Okay? But again, like all of these, it's a phase. It's a phase. So a successful building phase means we honor the need to feel full, to expand, to be hungry for more, and we honor the times where we need to be relaxed. We need to be more receiving, not so out there going, not so active, active. Okay? All right, so that was 1, cleansing, 2, building, 3, sustaining. This is like, it's kind of like, biological cruise control. We're sort of in a groove. No big deal. I'm eating because I'm hungry. I'm not eating. I'm not hungry. There's nothing to really, there's no like internal need of like, I have to fix this. There's no big like, it's just, yeah, like things are good. I'm good. And it's interesting because we often don't notice this as a sustaining phase because it feels a little bit like ho-hum, like nothing much is going on. And often when people are trying to lose weight and they reach what Weight Watchers would call a plateau, this is actually a sustaining phase. Your body's like, yeah, I'm good here. This is where I need to be right now. And finding a sense of rhythm and normalcy in just like, yep, this is it. This is where I'm at. And this phase often asks us to let go of nutritional efforts. Okay, I'm going to do something now. I'm going to let go of the nightshades, or I'm going to start eating more of the all right, food's here. Like, and we shift our attention totally from food and health and diet and crafting our perfect, nutritional buzz to our life. We're just doing life. So a successful sustaining phase has a wonderful sense that things are kind of ordinary, and ordinary being okay, right? A little bit even. And we relax into, yeah, I'm pretty even. It's all good. Okay? And then, of course, appropriately right after this sustaining phase, phase number 4 is the emotional phase, right? This is a time when we eat, when what we eat, excuse me, is driven by how we feel. It's emotional, right? No matter how much our brain knows, no matter how much our inner nutritionist wants to do the right thing, our feelings are going to dictate the foods we choose. And this is a really hard phase for us, especially women with food and body issues, because we a little bit freak out like, oh my gosh, I'm eating emotionally. Well, yeah, we're emotional beings, and food is another way that we support and connect with our emotions, and sometimes the way we take care of our emotions. Right? So sometimes rather than fighting this experience, like, oh my gosh, I ate emotionally, sometimes it's good just to accept it, right? And surrender into it. It's sometimes we just need to feed our emotions precisely what they need, right? So sometimes I'm like, oh, I just want comfort food, right? My comfort food growing up was bread and butter because we had like a very healthy house. And so it was like a big deal to have anything junky, and which sort of flipped me the wrong way, wasn't the greatest thing for me, because then it was like, oh my God, junk food, I need junk food, because it was like a no-no in my house growing up. So so being in that place of saying, yeah, I really want some comfort food, that's something I really need, is really important. So for me, bread and butter was it. And so sometimes I'll take out my gluten-free bread and my butter and be like, yep, this is a bread and butter moment. At the same time acknowledging, because what I used to do is eat these giant muffins in New York City, and that was my comfort food. And as I started doing the work, I realized like that muffin was what I called would fill my God hole. when I was feeling that place of emptiness or aloneness or, lack of connection to a sense of belonging or anything bigger. I was like, okay, this muffin, this will fix it. That'll go right into my God hole, is what I called it. And when I realized, like, you know what, that was not going to fix the God hole, I can still eat my bread and butter when I'm feeling that kind of, and go, this isn't going to fix it, but I'm going to eat this because this is what I really want. This is my emotional pull right now. And then we're able to move through it a little easier, right? Because when we get into the, oh my God, I ate it, and now, that's hard. Because then we're into good and bad thinking, and then we're good or bad. So this phase, this emotional phase, has a way of trumping all the other phases. It's kind of a little bit like a wild card. It comes in, bam, right? It's our feminine presence making her needs known. I have feelings. I have needs. I have desires. Take care of me, right? So it's a non-rational part, and we want to really pay attention to her and honor her, okay? And we need to welcome it, just like any other phase. Okay? So a successful emotional phase of nourishment means that we listen to ourselves. We listened to what that food was, but we also listened to what we really need on a deeper level. Okay? The other thing when we go through an emotional nourishment phase is we've moved through some uncomfortable terrain, because an emotional eating phase shows up because we're a little bit uncomfortable, right? There's stuff that's hard. And it asks us to let go of fixing or justifying. So emotional eating is not something to get rid of, it's something to embrace and to honor. Okay. Celebration phase, I'm going to hold that for the end. That's the next phase, but I want to talk about that at the end, and I want to shift into learning phase. So learning phase is a time where we naturally seek to try something new, a different nutritional approach, maybe some new supplements, maybe new fitness, maybe new recipes. We might be in a place of learning, getting into new recipes online. And it's often, it can sometimes go with that cleansing phase, because it corresponds to when we're attracted to education, to growing. Right? We want to have a new habit. It's a time of discovery, and it's a naturally exciting, expanding, opening a time. It's a freshening time, right? It's a sort of, it helps us to be a little bit trial and error in this. Like, okay, it's an experiment. I'm learning, right? Instead of getting into this, like, this is the right way to do it, if we can really embrace that learning of, like, so does this work for my body? How does this work? And to stay in connection with body wisdom instead of in connection with the book that we're reading. That's a very important part of the learning phase. Then there's the fanatic fundamentalist phase. Oh, I've been there many times. So that's a time when we're driven to follow a specific diet, right? Eat certain foods, take certain supplements, very controlled, very purposeful. It's not very fun for our friends and our relatives, right? I've done that. Oh, I can't eat that. No, I don't eat this. I can't eat that. And I'm only eating raw. That was my biggest fundamental fanatic phase. I'm only eating raw, and I stop eating at 7, right? It's very controlling. This fanatic fundamental phase can border into orthorexia, which is an eating disorder around really getting just right? And it's often tied to a deep search for health, right? A desire for health, or often weight loss at all costs, okay? And this fanatic phase can really hook into perfectionism, okay? And it can get rigid and become very isolating. So we really need to embrace that part when it comes, and to ask it to soften, right? It requires that we move from fanaticism into where we like this phase asks us to look at where we tighten our world, where are we trying to be in control, right? Where are we trying to like get a handle on it and have it stick? And most of the women I work with have like been around the block once or twice. We know life doesn't stick. It just keeps rolling that way, you know, in different ups and downs. So that's the fanatic phase, fundamentalist phase, that rigid phase. And then there's the death phase. So the death phase is nothing works. I hate this. I hate my food. When I'm in death phase, I'm always texting my friends, what are you making for dinner? Like, I'm bored. I'm bored with my food. I'm bored with cooking. Things that I usually like, I don't like. Green smoothies that I always adore, I hate, right? Nothing tastes good. And it's often like there's a little bit of a personal rut, right? There's a little bit of like a dip. It's like, ugh, everything's blah. And this phase, like all the other phases, is a necessary season of the soul, right? This is a normal part. We're just like, and sometimes it just comes because we're overwhelmed, and it's just like, oh, I can't deal with one more thing, and feeding myself, and food is boring, and I don't want to feed just me, and I don't really want to cook for everybody, and I don't want to be in the kitchen, and right, this is often a phase we just have to sort of hang out through, right? This death phase, like nobody wants to like be in that slump, right? And our relationship with food, it's a lot of little mini losses and mini deaths along the way. Like, when I was like, oh, sugar really, really, really doesn't work for me. That's such a bummer. Like, right? It's a little bit of a mini death. There's a lot of those. And so letting this be another phase, absolutely. And our beliefs about food and life often kind of need to die, some of them. And it takes courage to move through this phase. Okay? Then healing phase. This is another phase, nourishment phase. And this is a time where we consciously use food and supplements as medicine. You think about a flu or a cold, right? I start taking vitamin C. I start doing fire cider. I add onion and garlic to everything, right? There's times when I talked about, after rosé season, and I'm like achy inflammation. I'm in a healing phase. I'm going to add greens. I'm going to add garlic. I'm going to add those onions, all those things that reduce inflammation, right? So that's the healing phase, because what we put in our body does matter, right? So, and a healing phase can feel like a special time, or it can feel like a real challenge, right? When we have a specific health issues and we have to treat it a certain way, that healing phase can feel really challenging, right? This is a phase to really dig deep. And we learn a little bit to say, you know what, I have these preferences, but I'm really prioritizing my health on this one. This is what I need, right? So self-care really is like really knowing our body is a lot of this healing phase. But when we distort this phase, we can become overly fearful of eating the wrong foods. And we can limit ourselves by staying stuck in a specific healing diet that no longer serves us. We can end up feeling like we're always broken, which is not true. Okay? Number 10 is the anything goes phase, right? This is when, like, I don't know, everything is like, we have weird cravings. We're eating like foods we don't usually eat. Suddenly one meal a day seems like the perfect thing. It's like sort of all bets are off. And in an archetypal sense, and we haven't really gotten into this for everybody, but who's coming to the table, are different archetypes that come to the table. This is a little bit like the trickster. Like, yeah, suddenly, I don't know, like for me, chocolate, I love chocolate, and I can do it pretty well if I do it like before noon. It won't keep me up, but a lot of it makes me feel crappy. And recently I was going through a crisis with my son, and I was chocolate every day. It was my happy food. And I felt like it was a little trickstery because I felt fine. I was like, oh my gosh, this is a happy food for me right now, and this is what's going. It wasn't like, I was also doing the protein of the building phase, but I was like, the chocolate was like a little bit of the trickster. Like, it's okay. It's going to be fine. My body didn't like blink an eye about it. And then I needed to stop. And when this phase visits us, we kind of have to just let it do its thing, right? It takes us in unexpected direction. So that's one aspect of the anything goes phase. The other aspect is what I call the whatever diet, which is if we've been too long on a cleansing diet, too long on a healing diet, too rigid, we're going to bust out of it and get into the whatever diet, I'm eating whatever. It's different than the anything goes. The anything goes is like, oh my gosh, suddenly I need pomegranates every day. Like I just have to have pomegranates every day, right? That like your body just needs it. The whatever diet is the reaction to the tightness and the rigidity. The last phase before we go back to celebratory eating is the surrender phase. And this is a time when life is asking from a nutritional standpoint to surrender to what is, right? We're asked to eat how life wants us to eat, not how we would like to do it, right? Sometimes that shows up based on economics, right? People who don't have the resources to buy whole foods, they're going to eat what there is. Surrender phase, right? There was, when we went through a period of visiting somebody in the hospital all the time. Like we were sort of surrendered. What's in the hospital or what's around that we could get takeout from? But we were basically living at the hospital a lot of the time. It's a little bit of a surrender phase, right? And it's a sort of a go with the flow time, right? And we have to it's a little bit of a humility experience. Like this is what is. And sometimes we can't, make that beautiful salad or we can't. And it's like, you know what? I just have to surrender to this is my reality and not give myself a hard time about it, right? We're asked to, trust in life and nourish ourselves in other ways. And it can stretch us both physically and spiritually. And when we get distorted in this phase, we stay locked in the demands of a job or a living arrangement that fails to nourish us, right? Or we believe there's no other way except to eat that hospital food. That's if we get locked in that surrender, okay? Then I want to go back to the phase that I skipped over, which is the whole reason I decided to talk about this today, which is, hold on, let me find my notes. Here we go, celebration phase. So celebration phase is fun, right? This is where a lot of people are right now. There's a natural attraction to pleasure through food, right? There's memory foods. There's relationship foods, foods that you make once a year, foods that you make with people. And there's just wanting to eat just to be in celebration. It's not necessarily, I'm not really hungry, I'm not really thirsty, but there I am with my glass of champagne and my delicious, cookie or, fancy whatever. And at those times, it's our pleasure seeker who's at the head of the table. It's our fun seeker who's at the head of the table. And that's great. That's totally fine, right? That's appropriate. And we don't want to knock her out. We want to let her enjoy the celebration. We want to fully feel every pleasure bite, every orgasmic morsel of chocolate. We want to be in that fully, because if we start having a remorse, I shouldn't have, right? Then we get into this guilt, and that doesn't feel good, right? We start feeling bad about ourselves, and then eventually we bust free into the whatever diet, right? That whatever phase. So the celebratory eating, it's a time in our life when we're opening up to more happiness, right? We're breaking free of the patterns of every day, right? It marks a time of positive transition sometimes. It's not just holidays, it's weddings, it's, all sorts, it's birthdays, it's those celebration moments. And we want to feel like we have that breaking free, that like letting go of the rules, being in the holiday spirit. And when we distort this phase, we get hooked on the instant satisfaction, right? Different than relaxing into the pleasure, right? Like, oh, I'm going to eat that and that's going to do it for me. It's like, no, this is a moment to be in pleasure. Celebratory phase is a time to bring that feminine in and to really be in that place of sensuality. And when we're in it fully, we're more able to connect to that place where it's like, I'm full actually. That was so fun. That was so delicious. I'm full. And you know what? I can let it go for right now. And we have to notice, right, how there's a sense of, uh-oh, if I let that pleasure seeker out, she'll just keep going and going and going and going. And we have to start to trust these are phases of nourishment. My pleasure seeker can come, and so can my wise woman come to the table, right? And there's fear often for people around holiday eating in part because it points to our fear of pleasure, right? Our belief that my impulses are so intense and so dangerous that I'll do damage to myself, right? With my lustful appetite, right? So this phase is about learning to trust the body in its pleasure, in its femininity, in its desires. It's about learning to trust ourself and our fullness, our satiety, our incredible ability to experience life. Okay, whoa, that took a little longer than I thought to get through all of those phases. And I hope that was helpful. Any questions before, or any thoughts about what came to you, what's going on? All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this recording up on with a YouTube link. Then I'm going to put it on WhatsApp in a group with all of us, and then we can continue to have the conversation about it there because it's a juicy conversation. And I hope it's been helpful to all of you. I'm excited to start this new phase of these curriculum calls. Clearly, oh good. Rebecca says, hold on, it was wonderful and so helpful, Nina, thank you. You're very welcome. You're very welcome. And I'm really excited to have this time just to jump into curriculum that I don't want to take the time from our Nourished Path groups because there's so much wisdom in each group that I really want to focus on that and focus my curriculum for these other times. So thank you all. Love to you. Big hugs. Bye.
Yeah.